Ever notice how when an ice cube melts in your drink, the level stays the same?
Yeah.
It's a simple observation, but it kind of holds a surprising key to understanding the complex relationship between melting ice and rising sea levels, something you
Wow.
specifically asked about.
Okay.
So today we're taking a deep dive into a research paper titled, "Is the Melting of the Arctic the Cause of Rising Sea Levels?" to get to the bottom of this.
And it's a question with a lot of nuances,
Mm.
which is where a deep dive like this is so valuable.
Absolutely. This isn't about just skimming the surface.
Yeah.
We're going for a full understanding.
Yeah.
And to start, the paper points out that not all ice is created equal.
Right.
We've got sea ice, which floats on the ocean,
Right.
and glaciers, which sit on land like frozen giants.
That's a crucial distinction. Think of sea ice like that ice cube in your drink. It's already displacing its own weight in water.
Okay.
Picture that ice cube it's pushing aside or displacing a certain amount of water, right?
Right.
When it melts, it's simply becoming water that takes up that same space. Archimedes figured this out ages ago, and it applies perfectly here.
So that's why the water level doesn't change.
Exactly.
Even though the ice cube is gone, it was already accounting for that space.
Right.
It seems counterintuitive, right? Most people assume melting ice automatically means higher water levels.
It's a common misconception, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And while melting sea ice doesn't directly raise sea levels, that doesn't make it harmless. As
Yeah.
the paper highlights, it actually sets off a chain reaction with major consequences.
Right, like less ice means more of the ocean is exposed, absorbing heat and amplifying the warming effect.
Precisely. But let's shift gears to those glaciers we mentioned, the ones on land.
Okay.
Unlike sea ice, when they melt, it's like pouring a pitcher of water into a bathtub.
Right.
That water directly adds to the ocean's volume.
Okay, so that's the direct link to rising sea levels we hear so much about. Those glaciers are holding a massive amount of water above sea level. What happens as that water flows into the ocean? We're talking coastal communities, ecosystems. What are the real-world consequences starting to look like?
We're already witnessing more frequent and severe coastal flooding, increased erosion, and saltwater intrusion into freshwater sources. And unfortunately, these impacts are only projected to worsen as sea levels continue to rise.
And the paper doesn't stop there. It brings up another factor impacting sea levels, something called thermal expansion. Can you unpack that for us?
Think about that bathtub analogy again.
Okay.
Imagine filling it with hot water. Even without adding more water, you might notice the water level creeping up slightly. That's because heat makes the water expand and take up more space.
So it's not just about adding more water. The existing water is expanding as it gets warmer.
Exactly. And since our oceans are absorbing a huge amount of heat trapped by greenhouse gases, thermal expansion is a significant contributor to rising sea levels. In fact, it's estimated to be responsible for about half of the observed sea level rise we've seen in recent decades.
Wow. So we've got melting glaciers adding water and the ocean itself expanding as it warms, and of course that loops back to the shrinking sea ice. With less reflective ice, the ocean absorbs even more heat, further accelerating the cycle.
It's a complex system with multiple factors all intertwined.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, that warmer water isn't just expanding, it's also affecting the rate at which glaciers melt. It's like,
Right.
like turning up the heat on a melting ice cube. The process speeds up.
So it's all connected, a kind of domino effect, with rising temperatures impacting both the volume and the temperature of ocean water, which further fuels the cycle. It feels like we often hear about the global average sea level rise.
Right.
But what about local impacts? The paper mentions that some areas are more vulnerable than others.
Absolutely. Geography plays a huge role. The paper specifically points to places like the Maldives, Bangladesh, and low-lying island nations in the Pacific as being on the front lines of this crisis. They're already grappling with more frequent and severe flooding.
Right.
Some face the very real possibility of becoming uninhabitable in the coming decades.
It's a stark reminder that this isn't just about abstract measurements. It's impacting real people's lives and cultures in profound ways. And those impacts extend far beyond the coastlines themselves.
Exactly. Think about coastal cities. They're economic hubs, home to ports, businesses, industries that depend on stable coastlines.
Right.
As sea levels rise and flooding intensifies, these economic engines are disrupted, impacting supply chains,
Right.
markets, even job security for people far inland.
It's like that saying, we're all connected. What might seem like a distant problem, like melting ice caps, ripples out to affect us all in some way.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And we can't ignore the human cost. Millions of people living in coastal communities are becoming increasingly vulnerable to displacement due to rising sea levels, the potential for mass migrations, resource scarcity, even political instability,
Right.
as another layer of complexity to this issue.
It's a reminder that this isn't just an environmental issue, it's intertwined with social, economic, and geopolitical factors as well. The paper seems to highlight that interconnectedness.
It does.
Mhm.
And it underscores that tackling this challenge requires a multifaceted approach. Yes, understanding the science is crucial,
hmm
but we also need to be engaging with these broader implications.
So where does this leave our listener? It can feel overwhelming to grasp the scale of this issue, let alone know what actions we can take to make a difference.
Yeah.
What are some tangible steps we can take to address this?
It's a natural response to feel overwhelmed. But it's important to remember that every action, no matter how small, contributes to the solution. Reducing your carbon footprint is a great place to start. Simple things, driving less, choosing energy-efficient appliances, even being mindful of your consumption habits,
Right.
all contribute to a larger solution.
It's about making conscious choices in our everyday lives. But what about pushing for larger scale change? Where do we even begin?
That's where collective action comes into play.
Mhm.
Supporting policies that promote renewable energy, advocating for sustainable infrastructure,
Mm-hmm.
holding our elected officials accountable. Never underestimate the power of your voice. Talking about climate change with your family, friends, and community raises awareness and builds momentum for change.
It's a team effort, individual actions combined with collective action for a larger impact. There is a sense of hope in that.
Absolutely. We're not powerless in this situation. We
Yeah.
have the knowledge, the tools, and the capacity to create a better future.
That's a powerful message. So we've covered the science behind melting ice and rising sea levels, but this deep dive has also revealed the far-reaching impacts of this phenomenon. Is there anything else you think our listeners should keep in mind as we wrap up our exploration?
I think the key takeaway is this. While the science can feel complex, the crux of the issue is relatively straightforward. Rising sea levels driven by a warming climate are a present and growing threat.
Yeah.
But we're not bystanders in this story.
Right.
Our understanding of the problem combined with collective action can make a difference.
It's about acknowledging the challenge while also recognizing our ability to shape the future. Yeah.
I like that. So to our listener, we hope this deep dive has given you a clearer picture of the relationship between melting ice and rising sea levels, and perhaps even sparked some ideas for how you can be a part of the solution.
Remember, even small actions multiplied across our communities have the power to create a ripple effect.
Beautifully said. Until next time, keep asking those insightful questions and dive deep into knowledge.